I've taken a break from some of my fun projects to tidy up my workshop a little. I've 3D printed some wire reel holders, which I've designed in FreeCAD. I'm going to quickly fly through the process of making these. They're a very basic design, but worked well for what I needed. This is designed using FreeCAD version 1. I'm going to mention some supplier names during this video, but this is not a sponsored video. It's just to give you an idea of where you can buy the relevant items, but other suppliers are available. It's designed with scope for different size spools, although those that are significantly larger or smaller may not fit. But I did have one unusual spool that fitted, and I was able to move some wire onto custom designed spools. More about those later. I started by looking at the wire spools that I already had. It's primarily designed for one particular size, but I've also used it to tidy up some of my existing spools, and I've even designed some custom spools to replace some others that I had. This is primarily for 16/0.2mm stranded wire that I bought from Switch Electronics. They sell a 50-metre reel, which is 8.5 centimetres in diameter, a hole of approximately 3 centimetres. They're about 12 centimetres long, although it can cope with any length depending upon spacing of the bracket. I also bought some thinner 7/0.2mm cable, which fits as well. As I said, I've also designed some of my own spools, which are designed around some spare cardboard tubing that I had. I started with some dowel I bought from Wix. I wanted to see what options were available for a reasonable price, and I went for an 18mm wood diameter dowel, which is just right for what I wanted. I then created the design around that using FreeCAD. With a flat bracket to mount against the wall, I then created the bracket. It's designed around the size of the dowel, with 2mm extra, effectively 1mm. Think about the radius from the centre of the dowel to the side. I went for a curved shape. I felt this gave a good compromise between strength and reducing the print time and amount of PLA needed. I also thought it looked quite nice. And that's then padded out by 5 centimetres in each direction. I've then added some fillets when it joins the back piece. I 3D printed with extra wide walls and 60% infill to provide the strength needed to support the weight of the cables. I also designed end stops. These are mainly for aesthetics, but I've left plenty of overhang, so they're unlikely to fall off without them. Initially I made them a tight fit, which is fine for an end that doesn't need to be removed, but it made it difficult to remove if I wanted to swap a reel in and out. So I then made it slightly larger, but added a small hole, which I thought could be used for a screw to hold them in place. And I think that should be fine, as it's not very often that you would ever remove the wire spools. But in the end, I just used a bit of blue tack, and that just provided enough stick for them to stay in place and makes it easy to pull them off so that I can swap the reels in and out in future. I won't show the full process of the spools, but I started with a cardboard tube. I found that in my garage. Unfortunately, I can't remember where it came from. It appears to be spare packaging, and previously I had something wrapped around it, but it was just perfect size for what I wanted. I sawed off 3 lengths of the cardboard to make 3 spools. I designed a simple end shape, which is designed to take the spool and goes over the cardboard tube. One thing I changed was to have the end of the spool come in a little bit further to cover part of the cardboard tube. It makes it easier to position the tube, but also hides the untidy end of the cardboard. I created a cutout to reduce the amount of PLA for when it's 3D printed, and I used a polar pattern to duplicate that cutout around the spool. I used a little bit of Gorilla Glue to hold it in place. The Gorilla Glue does expand when setting, so only a small amount was needed. Finally, I mounted them to the walls. I've deliberately mounted the top one further away from the others, and this allows for larger spools, although there's a significant catch. In most cases, the maximum spool size is dictated by the distance from the wall, so approximately 12 centimetres diameter for the spool. In this case, though, It's not because of the total diameter, but just because this one spool has a very large internal diameter of the spool hole. So this reel, which is from CPC, is a 100 meter 7/0.2mm wire, and then that can be mounted on the top rail. It sinks a little, and the extra distance means that it doesn't conflict with the roll below it. I could have made the brackets longer to add bigger spools, perhaps 3D printer PLA spools, which are about 20 centimeters in diameter. However, the amount of weight that would put on is beyond what I've designed for in this case. So that would need significantly stronger support, perhaps a wider dowel. But this one is specifically designed for these wires, and it does the job for what I wanted it for. My final comment is the colour of the mounts. I originally created using rainbow colour PLA. This is good for specific art designs where you want a variation in colour, but in my case, I mainly create either practical or model projects, so I had some left over that I wasn't using. So I used that up. Due to a couple of failed prints, the colour didn't follow through, so there's big jumps between the colour variations. When I ran out of that, I used green PLA, and this particular one changes colour based on the temperature, between dark green when cold to a very light green yellowy colour when it's warm. It's a nice novelty, but again, not something that's particularly practical, so I just used it as a way to use up this PLA that isn't really that practical. If you want your own, you can download the FreeCAD and STL files. See the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in a future video.